There we go. We are live from the foyer of my hotel, and it's just gone 20. Well, it's about to go 20. It's just gone 23 minutes past 10, I think. It's been a long day so far, but an incredibly exciting day. I'm just really also very excited to welcome, and I hope I'm not going to mangle your name here, Eisuke.
Yes, that's close enough.
Oh,
Thank you.
perfect. Okay. No, if it's not close enough, you must let me know. We've been following each other a long time on social media, haven't we? But for
Indeed.
some reason, it didn't compute, even though I planned this trip to Japan a couple of months ago, it didn't compute to reach out to you until I tried to book tickets for the thing we're going to be talking about here, which was the production of Casino Royale, My Name is Bond, the Japanese musical, all-female version of Casino Royale. And then when I was on that website, it said, because it was a nightmare to book tickets for it from the UK, it had a space where you had to put in your phone number. I thought, I don't have a Japanese phone number. And then something went off in my head. I was like, I know someone who has a Japanese phone number. We didn't have to use your phone number or anything like that, but that was what sparked off the memory. So yeah, we've both seen that production, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Do you just want to introduce yourself just for the purposes of this? Because I know many people know you by your Instagram handle, your amazing Instagram account, inspired by Bond. Yeah.
Indeed. Yes, my name is SK OGI. I yes.
I was a mile off. I was a mile off. I do
No, no. Well,
apologize.
accurately, it's ASK, but that's
Ace game.
ASK. But yes, I used to live in England. Or well, I was born in England, so hence
Hmm.
the brief accent I have left. And they called me SK there. That's how people call me. But yes, I have an Instagram name by the account of Inspired by Bond, which runs extremely infrequently these days. Your work's been killing me, but whenever I can, I try to post things. Uh, Articles for Pete Brooker's page from Taylor's Whip. That's probably all I have to say about myself.
Fabulous. Yeah, a very, very stylish account. And I love the fact that in your profile picture you have the pose from Diamonds Are Forever, which
Yeah.
is and that amazing suit. Did you actually have that suit made, the Diamonds Are Forever suit?
Well, yeah, the that was the first of the many things I got from Said. Yeah, he's a tailor, friends with Matt for a long time. I knew him through Matt, and I gave him a shot, and he did a perfect job. And it's been my first and my favorite jacket ever since, though I'm not wearing it today.
Because you know how much I love Diamonds Are Forever, full stop. And a lot of people don't like the clothes in that film, and I have a bit of a friendly thing with Matt Spacer about the pink tie, because I really love the pink tie in Diamonds Are Forever, but he's not such a fan. But each to their own.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so yeah, thank you for joining me this evening, because we were talking over WhatsApp while I was on the way back from this theatre production, and then I thought, oh, we're in the same time zone, for a change. And in fact, we had originally thought of meeting up in Tokyo, but the times
Mm.
just didn't work, did they? So this
Yeah,
is the next best thing. At least we're in the same time zone
same
anyway.
time zone.
So just before we talk about the production,
Mhm.
um, I'm trying to get my head around, because the play we saw this afternoon, the audience was crammed, mostly
Mm.
women, which I
Mm.
understand that Takarazuka Revue tends to have a mostly female clientele. The queue for the gents' bathroom was very short compared with the
Mhm.
ladies.
Yes.
um, but I've been trying to get a sense of kind of how much James Bond is part of the cultural landscape in Japan now, because I know back in the 1960s it was
Mm.
absolutely huge, and I know
Mm.
when Sean Connery came here to film You Only Live Twice, he was, he was inundated with adoration from fans. So
Mm. Mm.
just if you just kind of just give me really, but also listeners, a flavor of what it's like for to be a Bond fan in Japan.
Well, to be a Bond fan in Japan, yeah. Well, James Bond is, well, in short, not as big as it used to be.
Yeah.
And well, some people associate him by 007, by James Bond. But some, in fact, a lot of people in my workplace associate neither. So I would say I'm a fan of James Bond or 007, and they'll be like, what are you talking about, cars or something? And they're like, no, I'm not talking about cars or trains or anything. But so especially in the younger generation of the 20s, people scarcely know 007 like at all.
Wow.
Whereas well, yeah, people in the 40s, 50s would definitely know by either name.
Right.
And yeah, it's definitely Sean Connery or Roger Moore at the best, but you don't, and well, some people in my generation or a bit above my generation would know Pierce Brosnan and Daniel Craig, but I'd say no one really knows Timothy Dalton or George Lazenby, or like, yeah, it's not really like a cultural thing. Like I understand in
Oh
England
wow.
that, you know, you'd flick a channel on and some channel would have some Bond movie, I heard, but it's
Yeah.
not, yeah, it's not that big at all. Every now and then they would have a Bond movie on TV, and I understand, well, when I look at Twitter or, you know, those social media platforms, it would have slight, you know, people 40s, 50s would be exploding like, wow, James Bond, but like the younger generation is not catching up really. And yeah, so I can dress the hell out of James Bond and no one would think I'm cosplaying or anything at all. So it makes my hobby easier. But yes, not as much as you would expect in the States or England, I'd say.
Well, that makes me really sad in a way, but it's something I have talked about quite a lot myself on various podcasts, not just my own, but other people's. And because obviously I work with young people during the day, and a lot of young people don't really know much about James Bond beyond, you know, in a classroom of about 30 children, you're probably talking about 2 or 3 who would say that they like James Bond. It's
Right.
not it's not as massive as it used to be. And I am genuinely concerned that without kind of new approaches, new audiences aren't going to come on board, which sort of leads us on to what we've experienced. It was a few days ago for you, and it was today for me. And if you can hear a load of boxes going on in the background, it's because, as I say, I'm in my hotel foyer recording this because my husband's trying to sleep in the room. He's a bit exhausted. This trip has really taken it out of both of us, but we're just powering through. But yes, there's a lot of unboxing going on in the foyer, and I'm keeping my voice quite low so I don't disturb other people. Yeah, so this production that we went to, of which I've described it as a Japanese musical version of Casino Royale with an all-female cast, which sounds really, really reductive in some ways because I'm trying to put it into kind of boxes. But I found it a really, really special experience. How did you find it?
Well, it was a completely, you know, this is a very special experience for me as well. I had always wanted to go to a Takarazuka, like that's the name of the review show, to begin with. And when I heard they were doing 007, I would, you know, I was looking into any, and yeah, trying to seize every opportunity to get a ticket myself. So I was very lucky to be able to see what I saw a few weeks ago. Yes.
I have seen a few because I posted about this a few weeks ago when we were planning this trip, and it was a coincidence that this was on at the same time as us planning the trip. It wasn't the reason for the trip, and it was only after we booked the flights and the hotels I thought, oh, hang on, I've posted about a year ago about this thing, and it is going on. So it seemed like it would have been a missed opportunity not to go. But as I say, it was a bit of a nightmare to book the tickets, but totally worth it. Was it an experience for you of trying to get a hold of it? Because I know we were actually on WhatsApp together, weren't we, trying to get the tickets. So did you manage to get an unsold ticket or one that had been handed back?
Exactly. I was extremely lucky. So there was a page that I was on, well, the same page we were on. And I coincidentally I'd put like an alert, but if in any case there would be like a resold ticket, the page would give me an email saying, okay, there'll be how many tickets out that you can rebuy. And I happened to be out of a night shift. So I was working all midnight. I decided to stay in my office for about an extra 2 or 3 hours. I didn't know why, but I just happened to that day. On the way back, I just happened to park my car for a big breakfast. And the moment I parked my car, I saw this alert. And I was like, okay, usually there were a number of alerts in the past as well, but I always miss them by like 15 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. But I received the email. The moment I received the email, I opened it. And it was I think it was a special seat. The seats are ranked S, A, B.
Yeah.
That seat happened to be an S seat. And it was like, okay, I know lots and lots of people would have their alerts on because they'd want to take it as well. So I thought, okay, it's gonna sell out. I didn't have expectations, but then I clicked on, and I was like, ticket. And in fact, yes, I was very lucky to grab the ticket. Very last minute. Literally, I think 2 days before the performance I went to see.
Wow.
So yeah.
And am I right in saying you took a 10-hour round trip to get here?
Exactly, yeah. So I'm in Nagano Prefecture at the moment. So I drove. My girlfriend was at work till like 10:30 p.m. So she came back from work. I was asleep. I to prepare for a long drive, and yeah, we left Nagano at about 11 p.m. We got to Nagoya, somewhere midway.
Yeah.
At around 3:30, we booked a hotel, had a brief nap, got out the hotel, went to Takarazuka for another, I'd say 2 hours. So 3 hours, 2 hours total on the way to and back. So we barely had time to enjoy anything around Takarazuka at all. But we went to see and just went back. Very
Wow.
there for us too.
That is dedication. So is your girlfriend a Bond fan?
Oh,
Or
she's
just dedicated to you?
Yes, I'd like to see, but she's a Takarazuka fan to begin with. So she knew a lot about, she introduced me to Takarazuka in the first place. So she was so up to it as well. And yeah, I've been trying to put her into Bond. I've shown her all the Craig films and Octopussy. That's all I've managed to show her so far.
Wow. Okay. That is a contrast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough.
I was like, on Amazon Prime, which one do you want to see? And she was like, I want to see Octopussy. Okay, sure.
Okay. Yeah, let's go for it then. So I'm trying to, and apologies, I'm mangling all of my Japanese pronunciations here, but is it Takarazuka? No?
Perfect. Yeah,
Yeah, Takarazuka. Because it's spelt more like Takarazuka in English Roman characters. Yeah, so Takarazuka. So I don't really understand much about this theatre company apart from was it formed around 100 years ago as kind of like because kabuki traditionally was all male, which is traditional Japanese theatre, a bit like Shakespeare in Britain used to be all male until sometime in the mid 1700s at least. But then so someone decided to form this theatre troupe, and there's actually several troupes now. And also the theatre, am I right in saying the theatre was kind of built to try and get people to use the train to that station? I'm sure I read that somewhere.
Yes.
But yeah, can you shed any more light on the theatre group?
So the theatre group, yes, you're right. I'm not too I don't know too much about the revue itself. But well, yes, it was formed about 100 years ago by a certain man who decided to form a theatre group entirely by women. And yes, the idea is that they would do both men and women as sophisticated actors. And the association they have with today's Japanese audience is that they, well, of course, they have a high level of performance of singing and dancing and everything, but most of all, it's a very unique skill only to those, only to the people in the theatricals, in that particular Takarazuka Revue, that a woman can perform so elegantly sophisticated as a man. So you saw what you saw, but like, they're specifically trained to, sing in a low voice, a deep voice, wear clothes, dance, move around as if they were a man. And that, there's a level of masculinity that only they can really do through their training. And yes, which is very, it's very unique to them. And there's a theatrical group, but there's also a school that goes with it. And so in order to go be part of the theatrical group, you would have to graduate the particular Takarazuka Music School.
Right.
Takarazuka Music School is considered one of the hardest schools to get into in Japan. Because what they test you for, like what they're looking for, hasn't changed in 100 years. They want the exact same thing, but in a very high level. You'd have a particular song, they're the things that they strictly check you by. And it's, considered one of the hardest schools to get into. But once you get in, you're put into, intensive school, like ballet, dance, tap dance, singing, everything. And then once you acquire that skill, you're put into the, I'm sure, but they put you into this particular theatrical group. You're divided into troops, and then within then you would strive to be the top star or the top leading woman, and then the rest. So that's once you're in a troupe, there's only one top star who played Bond this time, and there's one top leading female who played Delphine this time. And this was their last performance, so they are going to leave the group. But then the next people who are going to be the next top star, the next leading woman, from now on they're going to be the protagonists for whatever they do. So they're fixed as like the top two.
Right. Okay.
There would be a number 3, number 4, number 5. But that's kind of subjective. It depends on like, okay, if they're better at singing. Like if this particular play needs more male than women, then they would be put into priority. But then there's always a strong number 1 and a number 2. And the number 1 would be the face of the Takarazuka, theatrical group. So then they would be on posters, they would be on anything. But then if you're not either 1 or 2, you're really just an anonymous.
Oh, wow.
Exactly, yeah. So that's what everyone dreams to be. They want to be the star, they want to be the leading woman. But yes, some people never reach that goal. But yeah, this time, so the reason why it was so hard to get tickets this time was because it's the rare occasion that both the leading man and the leading woman are leaving.
Right. Okay, I understand.
So
I get it.
Fans of both are, they want the tickets so bad, and it's not because of 007 really, it's because they're leaving.
Right.
That's why it's hard to get.
I mean, there's so much context there that was so helpful that kind of, it would have been useful to know some of that before I went. But it was because it was brilliant because I was just kind of like blown away by it all. But what you were saying about they've been trained to perform in a masculine fashion, I found them utterly convincing for the whole, this was a 3-hour and 5-minute play with 35 minutes of that being an interval, and the last 15 minutes was pure song and dance, kind of like a medley of the music from the show. So it was quite a long play, but for the entire duration, utterly convincing. And I did forget that I was watching women a lot of the time, which is I'm sure what they're intending to do, but also in the rare moments where I wasn't utterly just like agog at what I was watching, I was kind of thinking about how, I always write about gender being a performance and all that kind of stuff. And I was literally seeing it there on screen, gender being performed.
Mm.
Yeah, so I just found it a brilliant experience. I wonder if everyone would find it a brilliant experience. I wonder if some Bond fans might actually kind of find it quite uncomfortable. I don't know, seeing women play, or not just Bond, but Mathis, Felix Leiter, Le Chiffre, those characters being played by women. I obviously, anyone who knows my channels knows that, this is the kind of thing that I absolutely love, about questioning these things and turning things on their heads and all that sort of thing. But I do wonder if some people might have found it a bit uncomfortable.
Well, in terms of gender, I'd say some people, but then it's not as jarring as you might expect.
Mm.
Really, because you're seeing James Bond. You're not seeing a Jane. You're seeing Jane,
Yeah, it is
literally. So
James. Mm.
so what people might find uncomfortable is if it was James Bond and it's double oh
Yeah.
007, but if it was Jane, people will find it uncomfortable. But
Yes.
what you were
Yes.
seeing was pure James Bond.
Yeah.
It happened to be performed by a woman, but she was literally a he. I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't,
Yeah.
and if you had no information, you might even think that it was a he
Yeah.
at that level.
Totally.
So that was, I don't think people will find him comfortable in any
No.
way. It's more the portrayal, or the impression of James Bond that people go in to see versus what they actually saw. You
Yeah.
don't really, you've never seen a James Bond musical to begin with. So, and if you've only watched Daniel Craig James Bond movies, you'd be like, James Bond is a cold blood, muscle super spy. But then that's not what you saw. It's like,
No.
almost entirely opposite
Yeah.
what you saw. So that's,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, difference in expectations might be one reason why people find it uncomfortable. But otherwise, I don't think people would hate it.
No.
Yeah.
I would hope not. I mean, it is interesting though that almost all of the audience were women, and I
Mm.
wonder if women find it that the whole concept, they just find it so empowering that these roles that have been played by male actors can be played just as convincingly by women.
Mm.
Do you think that's part of the appeal of it for a lot of women?
Yeah, I think the reason why lots of people, lots of women like Takarazuka is that, well, they can aspire to be either, really.
Yeah.
They see people dream to be the leading lady,
Mm.
because the leading lady is beautiful. But at the same time, it's a completely, it's a dream world in a way. You're not
Yes.
experiencing anything like it anywhere else. So you're going to see a world. It's the same reason why people like Bond movies, in my opinion. People just dive into 2 hours of fun. They can totally,
Escapism. Yeah.
exactly, escapism. They're going to forget everything, but just a world unique to what they're going to see. So it's the same idea, but um so yeah, male fans are very scarce. You're 95% of the audience
Yeah.
were women, and
Yeah.
was very easy to go to the men's room.
Absolutely. For a change. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I mean, we could be here literally all night, just talking about plot details. So I don't suggest we do that. And and you very kindly, maybe we do a follow up at some point where we do talk through the plot in some detail. But because you've said I've got the program and I've actually bought the script, but I don't read Japanese. So so Google Translate will only get me so far. So yeah, some input on that would be fantastic. But just in terms of kind of highlights for you, because it roughly followed, especially for the first half, it roughly followed, and then he deviated quite a lot in the second half, but
Yeah.
it roughly followed the trajectory of the Casino Royale story that we know and love. But what would this, perhaps if we kind of choose, maybe we start with the element that we enjoyed the most. What did you like the most?
Oh wow. So the element I enjoyed the most was that they knew they were going to deviate from the source material,
Yeah.
but at the same time they knew what made James Bond James Bond. So there were certain
Yes.
elements that
Yes.
they intentionally kept. Whether that would, make the story progression slower, they knew they were doing James Bond, so they knew they needed certain characters like Moneypenny, M. There was even an M song at the beginning, right? So there
Yeah.
was M,
Yeah.
Moneypenny, there was Q, there was the gadgets, there was some homages for the movie lovers as well. Like, I'm not going to spoil everything, but there were
No.
certain things that
Yeah.
that the movie lover would be like, oh wow, look what we saw. But yeah, those certain elements were strongly grounded. Um, that's
It's
why,
yeah.
you're jumping into something new, but you're not. It's completely fine for a bond as well.
And it's interesting. I think you've just hit the nail on the head. A light bulb went off at something you just said, and I've been trying to find the words for this ever since I saw it.
Mhm.
They did deviate from the story, but they understand what made Bond Bond.
Yeah.
And the moment for me where that crystallized
Mhm.
was where um Bond had a song to himself, which
Right, yeah, bond.
I think it's I bought the CD, which has got two of the songs on it.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's one of those songs, but essentially Bond has that song where he's on his own and he's saying what it essentially means to be a secret agent. I think
Right.
that was the gist of the song. And the kind
Exactly.
of
Exactly.
yeah,
100%.
well, wow, maybe I do speak Japanese. No, I
Yes.
no, I really don't. But honestly, the acting was so good that you could actually
Mm.
work out the story just from the actions and the gestures and everything else. And I thought that is what I've always wanted in a Bond film.
Mm.
Because in the Bond books, we get those moments of introspection, not massive, but we get those moments. And a musical is probably one of the best ways of actually doing that because it's in a film, you'd have to do it through a clunky voiceover or something like that.
Yeah.
But there's always a song in a musical where the hero reflects on, so it's the Who I Am song, isn't it? So all Disney musicals have one of those songs where the character sings about who they are, and most stage musicals do as well. And we got one for James Bond, and that was
Exactly.
just like, yes, they get who James Bond is because he has these moments,
Mm.
certainly in the Fleming books. But I've never seen that on film.
Right, exactly. So that also reminded me of something I read in the program. It was an interview of the lady who played James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
What in preparation of playing Bond, I think she read every single novel and watched a few
Yeah.
movies.
Wow.
And what she was saying was that the literal Bond is not much about the action. It's more about sort
No.
of self-reflection that you
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
And musicals, in a way, exactly as you said, are a perfect way to sort of do that monologue without going into clunky like
Yeah.
voiceover, like
Yeah.
narration. It's more, it fits in much more naturally, so that's why you got the impression of literary Bond, while
Yes.
going into, you're not watching a boring agent, you're watching something glamorous, but at the same time you have the strong essence of the literary Bond that in
Yeah.
Birmingham will also love as well. So
Yeah.
was
I mean, it wasn't all introspection. I mean, there was an amazing sequence where a Paris cafe gets shot up with a machine gun inside a briefcase.
yes. Wow, yes, exactly. Yeah, there was yeah, that was definitely not what you'd read in the novel, I'd say, but
No.
that's, yeah, that exactly hitting the medium between the sort of the escapism movies, but
Yeah.
also kind of, yeah, what to expect from Bond, but at the same time it's not going into unfamiliar territory. It's like, you're
Yeah.
still somewhere wacky, but also very, very grounded at the same time. So
I loved, you say grounded, but I loved all the combat scenes,
yeah.
especially, I mean, how to visualize a card game on film
Mhm.
and make it dramatic is really difficult. Martin Campbell did a brilliant job in the film in 2006, but how to do it on stage is even more difficult. But the way
Mm.
that they did it, without giving too much away, because I believe there is going to be a DVD version of this, I'm not sure how easily it's going to be able to get in anywhere apart from Japan. but I know some of us are going to search it out, obviously. But you know, without giving too much away, they did things like the card table being angled so that we could see the players around it. But when eventually Bond and Shifa face off, they end up jumping on the tables, and it
Throwing
is
cards.
almost like a this is going to sound terribly reductive, but it's almost like in a beat 'em up in a video game where you have the
Mm,
two opponents there on some kind of stage. And I'm sure there's a kabuki tradition of doing this as well, and you know,
mm,
stage combat worldwide. But the way that it was just so stylized, and you could see that they were trying to outdo each other with the cards, but
right.
it was utterly clear at every point who was, you know, who was winning, who was losing. I
Mhm.
just thought it was so clever.
Yeah, exactly. The card games. Some people, yeah, we were wondering how they were going to make that exciting because that's kind of the gist of the story. Like it's like, and yeah, they happened to do like, they angled the table, they stood
Yeah,
on it, they threw cards, people around them were dancing. It was very glamorous. And yeah, it made, well, how should I say? Even for the first time watchers, like people who are Takarazuka fans more than Bond fans would understand the context immediately. Like, these two
right.
are playing cards and they are dance battling over who's going to win.
Yeah,
And
dance battles. That's it. Yeah,
exactly, one's dressed lightly, one's dressed darkly. We know who's who, and who wins, who loses was very straightforward. But at the same time, it's evident that you're playing cards, so that was a very clever thing they did, I think. But
I
also
thought
the
so.
action, yeah, was very nice too.
Was there anything while you were watching
Mhm.
which you you thought, oh wow, I didn't expect to see that in a James Bond story?
Rasputin.
Yeah, for me, I also had that. I heard that. I thought, hang on. So, if you're wondering what on earth's going on, so basically, after the card game is won, um, essentially the person that's the Vesper character, Vesper's in it, but it's more like around Delphine. She's a character who's did I interpret it correctly that she was being manipulated by the Romanovs to kind of take over the family, and were the Romanovs planning to counter the communist revolution? Is that right, or did I take
Exactly.
too much
Exactly. You
away
must
from
speak
that?
Japanese. You must speak Japanese because it
Are you
is
joking?
exactly,
Did I actually get that right?
that was perfect. You
Oh
hit the
my
nail.
God. Wow. So yeah, so Delphine is being groomed by the remnants of the Romanov family, the Tsar's family, and then they plan to turn the revolution on its head. Um, and yeah, but anyway, the second act opens with her essentially like a coronation sort of thing.
Mm-mm-mm.
Yeah. And then a religious guy appears, and my immediate thought was, oh my God, he looks a bit like Rasputin, you know, the person who was murdered. So we've got to my knowledge, only the second ever supernatural character we've had in a Bond story after Baron Samedi.
Right.
So we've got Rasputin back from the dead, except, and this is when they turn the tails, it wasn't really Rasputin, it was Lashif. Is that right? It wasn't the other way around, that
Right.
Rasputin was Lashif all along. No, okay.
Exactly.
So we don't have a supernatural character in Bond. It's just Lashif disguised as Rasputin. And yeah, my mind was blown at that point.
Yeah, you went to see something bonkers, and it was like the bonkers moment we expected to see. But that was a very, I wouldn't say clever twist, but more like for the what the hell are we watching moment, which was so pleasant in a way because
Yeah.
for that, I think that moment began like on the second half, like right at the beginning of the second half, and the first act was very sort of I wouldn't say very close, but you knew you were watching something
Yeah.
loosely based on
Yeah. Yeah.
in Fleming's Casino Royale.
It
But on the
felt
second half,
like the novel.
exactly on
Mm.
the second half, the beginning, no one's dressed like any James Bond. You're like, okay, what am I watching again? Did I go into the wrong theater again? But it was a refreshing twist in a way. I liked how it shifted into a James Bond adventure after that brief moment of quirkiness, should I say, which was, yes, a lot of fun.
And I was thinking as I was watching, I was like, in a sense, I can feel my mind expanding because
Mhm.
some people have a very narrow conception of what a James Bond story should feel like. And there's the films and there's the books, and they're not a million miles apart. There are some substantial differences. But I think this really pushed the boundaries of what a Bond story could be.
Mhm. Definitely, definitely. I mean, I would be because people who watched the Takarazuka fans who watched the 007, the 007 performance, um, were, and I read on the internet some people wanted to, look at the source materials and see how Delphine was portrayed in the actual Fleming movies until they were actually read and were like, okay, wait, is Delphine not appearing at all? And like, they knew afterwards that it wasn't, in fact, a Takarazuka original. I mean, so in that sense, first time viewers had no, idea that it wasn't a completely original, character in a way. And heaven knows they wouldn't have expected a tragedy with a completely different woman who appeared as a field agent almost in the actual right in the actual play. So some people were in fact tricked by how in a way natural it was, as or convincing, as a James Bond, how should I say, action.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is definitely going to go into spoiler territory for anyone who plans to get the DVD or see it on stage if you're fortunate enough to do so. So skip the next 5 minutes or whatever if you don't want any spoilers. But I loved the ending.
Mm-mm.
I it's sort of like the Fleming Moonraker ending where Bond
Mm.
doesn't get the girl,
Mhm.
but the girl is this being 1968. We didn't say that at the top of this, but if you've seen my social media posts about it, you'll note fast forwards to, or any posts about this. We fast forward the action to 1968, and that's a very precise year because of all the protests going on around the world, particularly in Paris.
Mhm.
A lot of student protests, and she's essentially, she's of that generation, she's of that mindset, which James Bond wouldn't have been.
Mhm.
But he's understanding of where she's coming from, and she decides not to. She decides. I think she said again. This is not my Japanese because it was there in English. Did she say she was going to go to the US? Was it California? Was it? This is where I failed the Japanese test. Where? Oh no, New York. No, it was New York.
Well, at the
I
very
think.
end, I think.
I think she did. I think she said she was going to go to New York.
At the very end, I think. Did she say New York? I think no. In fact, no, no. I think it was Africa or something.
Oh, okay. Okay. So yeah,
I
I
think it was
clearly
Africa.
didn't hear that bit correctly. So yeah, so if she's
I
going to
might be.
Africa, somewhere else anyway.
Yeah, somewhere.
So she was getting out of that whole situation, and Bond is like, yeah, I'm very respectful of this. And the last song I believe was called Adieu.
Mm.
So it's like he bids her farewell, and then he goes off on his own, and the musical comes to a finale with Bond having a sad song to himself and living a bit of a lonely existence. Is that pretty much what happened?
Yeah. Though the ending tone is more like,
Yeah,
you're getting something in between, a mixture of like the
yeah, it's bittersweet.
literary. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
bittersweet.
yeah,
You're getting something like the literary Moonraker and Daniel Craig's Skyfall ending, like by
yes,
two kind of thing.
yes,
Like,
yeah,
Bond, are you ready for your next mission? Why, of course, ending
yeah.
at the same time.
MI6 ring, yeah,
Exactly, exactly. At the same time, he didn't get the girl, but he doesn't care too much because, like, he's just another Asian kind of thing. He's not, yeah. So it was yeah, it was a happy ending.
okay.
But it's not
That
the.
was just me projecting because I love sad maudlin James Bond. So I was kind of making it out to be more sad than it really was, but I still love the ending because
Yeah.
then you did all the way through the MI6 were off to the stage, off to the side, and the light shone on them, and it was either M or Moneypenny or Q or Moneypenny, and he had a radio watch which was very, very sci-fi for 1968. Yeah.
I'd say it was the best way to end a Takarazuka Bond movie.
Okay.
Big movie film, just because
Yeah.
if it was the typical Roger Moore, kissing in a shower ending, or like, in bed with a Bond girl ending, the female audience wouldn't have liked it as much as they
Right.
saw how refreshing it was. Like, they're not bedding each other at the end. It's not, I mean, there are bed scenes in Takarazuka other performances as well, but it's much more, how should I say, refreshing. And it's how should I say it's I'd say more creative liberty
Right. Okay.
that knows who they're showing.
Yeah.
It's women performing to women almost, so they don't want to do
Right.
anything that would appear misogyny in any way, which, I mean, there were no moments like that, but at the end it was much more like that as well. I'd say they were being extra
But
cautious.
it was I think it was still very romantic. You
At
did
the same
get
time.
you did get the Roger Moore ending just before that ending, with the
Right.
Union flag parachute and them both sitting there singing what sounded to my ears anyway. But I am tone deaf, but it sounded like a romantic song to me.
Yeah, romantic song.
So very much like it recalled the end of The Spy Who Loved Me, in the Bathos sub, not the escape pod from Stromberg's lair sort of thing. It was that sort of dynamic. But yeah. So anything else you want to say about it? Because I know it's quite late, it's getting quite late here, and God knows how this will turn out. You had a herd of children just stampeding past. So hopefully people will be able to make out the audio here. But no, thank you so much for joining me. And I know I was going to say it's late where you are. It's late where I am as well. Because we're in the same place for once.
Well, yeah. I mean, there will be a DVD out, perhaps only for Japanese audiences. It is entirely Japanese. They've never done anything intentionally English. So if there will be some material out for the general public, it'll be a nice opportunity for them to sort of delve into the further details. We really only talked about what we liked about or first viewing impressions, but there is definitely more space to talk about, like, the certain elements of what they did. And the program, in fact, I have right here, the program has so much more information about, how they made the story and how each character plays what. And, there's so much more trivial fun to discuss as well. So,
do you want to give us a sneak preview? Anything that stood out to you when you were reading the program? You thought, oh, okay, I didn't realize that.
Oh, right. So as I was talking about who's going to be the next leading lady of the review, since Bond's leaving, guess who's going to be the next leading man?
From the cast that I saw today.
The cast you saw today.
Lashif?
Correct. Lashif is going to be the next Bond, or not Bond, but like, main.
Yeah, the main hero, character, male
from
hero.
now on. Yeah,
wow.
So that's one fun bit of trivia. But yeah, and I haven't read too much into detail, but there is lots of, like small interviews of like what how the story was, woven, how they made, certain references. There are a bit more details, so that's for another time, I'd say.
Yeah, that'd be really great. And if anyone, I'm going to try and get this out pretty much before we leave. We've got another 3 days here in Japan. So I'm going to try and get it out before I get on the plane. But it's going to move from after next week. I think next Monday is the last performance near Osaka. But if people are in Tokyo, I know the tickets are ridiculously difficult to get. Have you got any top tips if people were to try and get a ticket?
You'd like a Japanese phone number to begin.
Well, yes, you might need a Japanese phone number. We actually perhaps I should keep my voice down here because the reception desk is literally there. We used our hotel.
Oh. That's a smart idea. Yeah, it's hard to get, but I mean, if you make sure you can dive right, directly into the reservation details, like, you have everything in advance, you could just, jump right into the tickets.
Yeah.
Or otherwise look into the, abandoned ticket alerts, how we
Yeah.
got tickets. So that leaves potential for some very good seats too. So
Yeah.
yeah. And some performances, like on the weekdays, or when, like, the freshman people do the entire cast instead, they have slightly lower rates because they're not, no one's quitting at that point. So
Yeah.
those performances, there's I think 2 or 3, if you're still watching the same performance but just with different people, that has probably a lower rate. I'm not too sure, but there are certain ways in which you can get a seat easier than other days. But yeah, I think we were very lucky in the sense
It
that
was a bit of a mission, wasn't it?
yes,
Yeah.
we were very lucky because Osaka stage is the official stage, so it's the very big stage. Tokyo has a smaller stage, so
Oh, is it really?
is
Oh, wow.
exactly.
Oh, see, I
Yeah.
was lucky, and also I had a really determined husband who stayed awake until 3 in the morning. So I owe him that one.